They were mothers, daughters, sisters. But under slavery, they were reduced to one thing: tools. Tools for labor, tools for pleasure, tools for profit. This is one of the hardest stories we've ever had to tell, but the truth is too important to ignore. This is the untold story of how America built an empire on the backs and wombs of black women. A story of rape, forced reproduction, and unimaginable survival. Between 1808 and the Civil War, the United States built one of the largest forced migration systems in history, and it happened entirely within its own borders. When the transatlantic slave trade was banned in 1808, America didn't stop enslaving people. It simply turned inward. The result was the domestic slave trade, a massive network of buying, selling, breeding, and transporting millions of black people for profit. Over 1 million enslaved men, women, and children were forcibly moved from the Upper South, places like Virginia, Maryland, and North Carolina, to the Deep South, where cotton, sugar, and rice were booming. Some were walked in coffles, chained in lines. Others were shipped by steamboat, locked in the holds like cargo. They were sold in auction houses from Richmond to New Orleans. They were inspected, weighed, and priced. But behind every one of those transactions was something even more horrific: a system of forced reproduction. Because once imports from Africa ended, the entire economy of slavery depended on black women giving birth to more slaves. That's where this story begins. Enslaved black women were no longer just laborers. They became the means of sustaining slavery itself. To meet demand in the Deep South, the Upper South, especially Virginia and Maryland, became the heart of a domestic slave trade. These regions exported people like livestock. Slave breeding farms developed, not officially by name, but unmistakably by function. Some had no crops at all. Their business was birth. Young girls, often just 13 or 14, were forced to bear child after child. Owners chose who they would mate with. Sometimes it was another enslaved man. Other times it was the slave owner himself. One former slave remembered, "They bred us like cattle. They chose who'd lay with who." Slave owners tracked birth rates with precision. Records show number of children per woman, age at first pregnancy, breeding value assigned in ledgers. Women who had more children were rewarded with slightly better food or clothing, but never freedom. Those who failed to produce children, they were punished, whipped, isolated, sold. In Virginia, thousands of enslaved people were sold southward every year, a system fueled not by the transatlantic trade, but by black women's forced reproduction. Economists of the time called it natural increase, but it was unnatural. It was calculated. It was cruel. The numbers tell part of the story. On plantations across the American South, enslaved black women were expected to give birth, not out of love or choice, but out of economic obligation. Historical estimates show that the average enslaved woman gave birth to between 4 and 7 children over her lifetime. On larger plantations, that number could be even higher, especially where owners actively rewarded or punished women based on fertility. Girls were often forced to start having children as young as 13 or 14 and continued until their 30s. Many of these births were the result of rape. Some were forced pairings, and some were with enslaved men they loved, only to have the children sold away. Scholars like Fogel and Engerman estimated in their economic analysis that enslaved women averaged 6.5 births, helping explain how the U.S. slave population exploded from around 1 million in 1808 to nearly 4 million by 1860, all without new imports from Africa. But the numbers hide the pain. Many children didn't survive past infancy. Poor food, overwork, unsanitary birth conditions, and a total lack of medical care meant black mothers often mourned as many children as they birthed. And still, enslaved women endured. Some found the strength to raise their children in love and faith. Others resisted by secretly using herbal remedies to avoid pregnancy, refusing to bring more children into bondage. These weren't just births. They were forced acts of economic production, and every child born into slavery was another link in a chain someone else profited from. Sexual violence was not a side effect of slavery. It was central to it. Black women had no legal protection, no ability to consent, no right to say no. They were raped by slave owners, overseers, even guests. White men were never punished. In fact, they profited. Harriet Jacobs, author of Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl, described being pursued by her owner at the age of 12. She eventually hid for 7 years in a crawl space above her grandmother's shed to escape him, a space only 9 feet long and 3 feet high. She wrote, "Slavery is terrible for men, but it is far more terrible for women. Super added to the burden of slavery are the pain, shame, and horror of sexual abuse." Jacobs risked disease, physical deformity, and madness to protect herself, because no law would. By 1860, as many as 1 in 7 enslaved people were listed as mulatto, mixed race. These weren't signs of freedom. They were proof of rape. Children born from these assaults were still slaves, even when their fathers owned them. The law, Partus Sequitur Ventrum, said that a child's status followed the mother. It ensured that rape increased profits. One of the most famous examples is Sally Hemings, who was enslaved by Thomas Jefferson. She was just a teenager when Jefferson began a sexual relationship with her. She gave birth to at least 6 of his children. Only a few were freed. Most mixed children lived in bondage, betrayed by their own bloodlines. These horrors aren't just theory, they're documented. In the 1930s, the WPA slave narratives recorded the voices of hundreds of formerly enslaved people. "I seen the boss man breed women like cows. They said I was good stock, made me lay with 3 men in a month. My mama had 10 children and not one daddy stayed." Historians confirmed the patterns. In Slave Breeding, Sex, Violence, and Memory by Gregory D. Smithers, breeding is described as a deliberate system, hidden by silence, but recorded in ledgers, birth logs, and estate inventories. In The American Slave Coast by Ned and Constance Sublette, the entire economy of the Upper South is shown to revolve around reproductive exploitation. Families like Franklin and Armfield, the biggest slave traders in American history, ran an empire based on buying breeders and selling their children down south. The epicenter of this human breeding industry was Virginia, especially Richmond, Petersburg, the Shenandoah Valley, Maryland, Eastern Shore, Baltimore area farms, North Carolina, Piedmont region. These regions had high concentrations of female slaves, strong records of infant births, low agricultural output, suggesting their product was people. Some known individuals include Hope H. Slatter, a Maryland-based slave trader who specialized in young, fertile women. Isaac Franklin, a partner in Franklin and Armfield, who personally raped enslaved women while transporting them south. Their names are known. Their crimes were public, but they were never punished. Enslaved women resisted in every way they could. Some refused to conceive, some fled. Some used herbs and potions to induce abortion. Some committed suicide rather than bring children into bondage. Others endured and raised their children to dream of freedom. Their resistance wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was in a lullaby, sometimes in a whispered prayer, sometimes in the simple act of surviving another day. Out of this world of chains, auctions, forced births, and stolen children, rose a woman who refused to be owned. Harriet Tubman was born into this system. She witnessed the pain of mothers torn from their babies. She knew the sounds of beatings, the silence of rape, and the weight of survival. But she didn't break. She ran, and then she went back, over and over again, risking her life to lead others to freedom. Tubman wasn't just escaping slavery. She was escaping a system built on the bodies of women like her, and she vowed to destroy it. She was never just a conductor. She was a warrior, a healer, a liberator, in a world that tried to turn black women into property. Harriet Tubman proved that they were power. Thanks for watching. If you found this video insightful, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue uncovering the hidden truths of history. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and we'll see you in the next video.